package you're getting in here, let me tell you.
Callum Lyle sends in another 5 Australian. Holy cow. Thank you, Callum. Says, from what people have told me about the Willow D+, it's the director's bad fanfic D&D story and an excuse to do his fetish and porn. Well, I don't know what his fetish and porn is. I watched about 15 minutes of it and I checked the fuck out. Actually, I don't think I got that far into it.
I watched the whole series.
Oh, Lord.
And
I can't wait to discuss this with you later.
are we wanting to discuss this later?
Well, you can give us a brief how you felt about it.
I felt like it started strong.
Let's just jump into it right away. Kara,
okay, we can do that.
Give us your review of the full season of Willow. But first, also, let us have your review of the movie and your expectations for the series going in, because I always find that to be relatively important.
I saw the movie for the first time, I think about 8 or 9 years ago. So it's still somewhat fresh in my brain, but I personally really enjoyed the original movie. I thought it was a great take on fantasy. I liked the character development in it. But then you jump into the series that they tried to do. And I personally felt like it started off strong. It had good potential. And then they just started throwing in certain check boxes. And it didn't feel authentic. Every checkbox that they tried to basically push in the show, it felt so forced. Every single one of them. It was not a fluid way to add in a lesbian love story. It wasn't a good way to. Well, I think the only person I liked was Alora and Boardman, which Alora is, of course, Alora Dannon from the original movie. She's obviously not the same character, but the same person, but she was kind of that quirky, ditzy, but also really kind of, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna figure it out while I'm doing it. And she had the best humor other than Boardman, but everything else was just forced. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel entertaining to watch. And it was the most anticlimactic season finale I've ever watched in a show. It was so bad. The whole interaction with them finally meeting the crone in the final battle. It wasn't well choreographed. The acting was bad. The whole trying to change your future or change the past by going into this thing and giving yourself into the crone was just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And yeah, it just wasn't for me. And I'm personally not surprised at all that it got canceled.
I heard that it ended on a cliffhanger. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because of where they ended it, there's, I think, they're into this other world. I'm trying to remember it completely, but it did end on a cliffhanger. But it's not something I was like, oh, I'm rearing to watch the next season and see what's going to happen. It didn't. It didn't do what they wanted a cliffhanger to do.
No, basically, because I noticed you didn't even mention that it ended on a cliffhanger, which I took to mean that you really were out of it by then and you couldn't care less about what were to happen.
Yeah, I think I was on my phone. I got so bored. And I was trying to still pay attention to it, but my husband and I both were we went in really excited, really hoping that it was good because we both really enjoyed the original Willow. And it was a big letdown for me.
Yeah, I enjoyed the original film quite a bit too growing up. And I think maybe I only got through 5 minutes because when they started bashing on Mad Mardigan, when you basically had her calling him a bad father and husband in so many words in the first 5 minutes. And then you have his kids who act like complete morons. And I was actually aghast at what they did to Alora. I mean, I didn't get into the show to see how she was as a character, but I'm just like, wait a minute here. They adopted her at the end of the first movie like their own daughter, and now she's their servant. What the hell is this? And she is supposed to be like the greatest sorceress. Why
I
is
wanted to
she
hide her and keep her from the crone.
made no sense to me.
It
I was like, but so no, like, but you said, as you said, it didn't kind of got left on a cliffhanger, but it didn't, right? It's kind of how it is. But we heard yesterday, the day before wasn't it, Andre, that the news that the show had been canceled, because we covered it right at the end of the live stream, if I remember right.
Yeah, so we would have first heard this on Wednesday. But before that, I just want to say that real quick about cliffhangers. If it's a cliffhanger, but nobody cares, is it then really a cliffhanger?
I don't know. That's kind of like a tree falling in the woods question.
Exactly. It's like the same kind of thing. So, because what stood out to me in the press at the time when it was released, it was obvious that it was absolutely tanking on Disney Plus, because the cast and the crew, they were all out in their social media begging for a season 2 and begging people to watch their work. I mean, it was so pure, so ideologically driven. How could you not watch it? But evidently, people didn't watch it. And when we hear from Kara, we just heard a review from one of 12 people to actually watch the whole thing, all episodes through. So yeah, no surprise that it was cancelled at all. As I pointed out on Wednesday, this is really a black eye to both Lucasfilm and to Kathleen Kennedy, because this is one of the relatively few properties they have, and it was actively cancelled. They weren't planning on this being like a one-season thing. They were planning like 5, 6, 7 seasons here. And it ended after 1. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
So embarrassing, in fact, that the director responded, didn't he, Tom?
Well, I was just going to say, hold up. It may not be as canceled as we thought. Well, at least according to John Kasdan, because he put out a very lengthy Twitter post that goes on for days.
Well, I mean,
but yeah.
Oh my. You know what? When I see that, you know what it reminds me of? The opening of the movie Spaceballs. How you basically see like the spaceship Spaceball 1, it just goes on and on and on and never stops. And like the first 8 minutes of the movie is just that spaceship scrolling by. That's kind of what I'm seeing right here with this long-winded thing. Shall we dive into it and see what...
now you know why I asked you to read it, Andre, because ain't nobody going to want to listen to my ass for that long.
Before we jump into that, can I say that there was maybe like 2 positives out of the show?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Go for it. Let us
it ended, and what else? No, I'm just kidding.
So there was what I'm thinking of is there was a fun callback to the original. They had some really fun callbacks to the original that really kind of fed for the nostalgia seekers that enjoyed it. Like there was this one, I think it was in like the original castle where Laura was born, and they actually had some of the scenes from the first movie kind of as almost like a hologram or like a ghostly presence. It was kind of cool. And then I am a diehard Witcher fan, and I hated the show, but Willow's production value was better than The Witcher. That was on Netflix. That's kind of it. The costume design was okay. The lighting was good. Story sucked.
Witcher was terrible.
Yes. I was so disappointed.
Season 1 wasn't bad.
But season 2, oof.
No, that was...
Oof. That was a train wreck.
Yeah.
Absolute train wreck.
I completely agree. Even with the convoluted ordering of season 1, I thought it was quite rich, and I thought it was pretty good. Although I could have used more Cavill, but I didn't mind. I didn't mind the backstory of the ugly Yennefer. I thought that was actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Like I've read all the books, and I've played the games, and like it's a world that I feel like they really had so much potential with, kind of like with Willow, but they just wanted to check boxes and it didn't translate well. And like one thing with Willow is that forced love story between the princess and her best friend. Like I can't, like I have tried to push the show out of my mind. I already can't remember anybody's names except for like Alora and Boardman, and that's it. That's all I can remember.
I couldn't tell you any of the new characters' names, but I can tell you all the original characters' names. But
yeah, exactly. But it would have been a lot more impactful if instead if they wouldn't have pushed a love story between them and focused on more of like true friendship and the power that like having like that person that has your back like all the time. They didn't need to have a love story tied to it. Like I can understand the love story between Alora and Prince Eric, but that kind of was okay. But the whole love story between the princess and her friend it was unnecessary and it was forced.
Yeah. So you're referring to the lesbian relationship, of course,
yes.
right?
Well, we've had to deal with this like forever. I don't know how this power change happened. Michelle Paradis, everyone whinges on Kurtzman for Star Trek, but Michelle really was the architect of lesbo disco. I mean, she's quoted as saying what was it, expanding Star Trek's diversity in the writers' room. They kept talking about their key was, what kind of characters do we have? Who else do we need? What more do we need in visibility? Who is not represented? And those were the discussions, according to her. That not that I have anything against gay women. Let me tell you, but I only mentioned it because that was her focus. That seemed to be the only driving force behind disco.
But just because you're like close to another woman or like you have strong feelings for another woman does not mean that you want to be in a romantic relationship with another woman.
Well,
everything is being forced into that now.
Yeah, and the mistake is that they think that showing the representation on screen is what makes for a story. Whereas here in Canada, I know a couple of lesbians in the military, and when you're out doing your military shit, you're not expressing your sexual interests. You've got a job to do. You've got a latrine to dig. You got people to fight. And that's like the complete difference in Star Trek, is that you've got a military vessel where everyone is just it's like a bar. It was, disco is more like a gay bar where everyone talked about their relationships, as opposed to a military vessel where they actually had stuff like to do,
duties,
which is what I like about Picard, in the sense that I believe Raffi and 7 of 9 sort of came out, but season 3, they're so busy trying to save the goddamn world that they're just people doing what it is they need to do on the.
It's only worse, Paul, because disco is not only a gay bar; it's a gay bar where the music and the atmosphere suck. It's the only one in the galaxy.
They did have a mirror ball though in the bridge.
That's it. But otherwise, like, there's no gay bar in the world that would be that tacky and that dour.
So, but this sounds like Willow is suffused with the same Michelle Paradis disease, where representation is more important than
a story.
Than the story.
The
Every woke production has some Michelle Paradis
to the story. Sorry.
No, sorry. Carry on.
No, I was just saying, like, I understand wanting to add representation, but you need it to accentuate an already established story. You don't want to just kind of throw it in. You want it to be meaningful. You want it to enhance what is already there. And I think that is what people really kind of vibe with, is whenever they can tell it's not just kind of, oh, here's the token checkbox. We've got that.
Well, this is bad writing.
Anybody justice.
It's just bad writing. I mean, when I had a lot of employees, fully a third. I mean, it's because it's downtown Toronto. Fully a third of my employees were gay. It didn't enter into anything that we were doing as, working towards, my business, making profit, having fun. Like it had nothing to do with it. I mean, you don't see it in your regular working lives. And this is what I don't understand with the people who talk about representation, even on the race side, where somehow you've got to express it. You don't express it in your day-to-day life. You're just trying to get through it and not punch the other person. That's pretty much it.